Meeting is being recorded.
So, hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I am Johanna de Graffenried. I am sitting with some red curtains behind me, and I have about shoulder length strawberry blonde hair. I'm a white woman, and I'm wearing a navy turtleneck sweater today. I'm really excited to be presenting on local advocacy, municipal ARPA funding, the creative economy, and strategic plans today. And this is such a crucial time for our state with the ARPA funding and with strategic planning for the creative economy that we wanted to make sure that everyone got started on 2023 on a great note. And so I want to just very quickly acknowledge that we have Ashley, who's going to be live closed captioning for us today. Thank you so much, Ashley. And if you have any issues, please feel free to say so in the chat. And Annie will be joining us as well, Annie McLean, and I'm going to be giving her a formal introduction in just 1 second. So also, we like to, at the Vermont Creative Network, acknowledge that I'm joining you today, and likely those of you who are calling in are from traditional and unsurrendered territory of the Abenaki people in the state we now call Vermont. And I'd like to offer this land acknowledgement. The Vermont Arts Council recognizes that we live and gather here in Abenaki land, the traditional and unsurrendered homeland of the Abenaki people, one of 5 Wabanaki nations, who have continual presence since time immemorial here in so-called Vermont. So we just like to take a second to acknowledge where we are in this space. If you have any follow-up questions for me about accessibility, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself at the Arts Council, and we will make sure to do our best to ensure that this information can get sent to you. And we're happy to answer any questions about that. I'm going to take a second now to share my screen so that we can get started. So here we go. So today we are talking about local advocacy, municipal ARPA funding, the creative economy, and strategic plans. We have Annie McLean with us together, who is from the Vermont Community and Economic Development Association of Northeastern Vermont. She's a community and economic recovery specialist, and her contact information can be found on the screen. Again, I'm Johanna de Graffenried. I'm the Vermont Creative Network Manager, and I'm with the Vermont Arts Council. Again, we're going to be talking today specifically about strategic plans in the creative sector, and then in about 5 to 10 minutes, we'll jump over to Annie and she'll dig into the municipal ARPA funding. One reason that we like to start with this section is to make sure that folks understand the importance of including the creative sector in your strategic planning efforts. So this is a solid foundation for ensuring that the cultural economy and the creative economy in your spaces are protected and are found in future opportunities for funding and for collaboration. Here's a nice quote that I like to share from Americans for the Art blog by Tom Burrup, who created the Creative Community Builders Handbook and many other publications. These cultural plans can also provide local governments with a powerful tool for setting cultural policies on the municipal level, as well as a vehicle to organize the capabilities of arts and cultural organizations, their supporters, and artists to make a difference in their communities. In 2016, the Vermont Arts Council did a plan study. The word art or arts was the best indicator that a town plan had integrated arts, culture, and creativity into its town plan. A total of 104 town plans at that point mentioned ACCSI, either using single words or words in conjunction with others, and close to 10% of Vermont town plans had a section or a chapter in which this was a significant role. There were about 93 goals, 82 policies, and 164 action steps related to this in town strategic plans. I also want to make sure to talk about the Vermont Creative Network resources that we have on this issue. So what you'll see is on our website here, we have a lot of research for you to use when you're talking with your town planners or when talking with regional planning entities about being included in their strategic planning efforts. We want to start by making sure to highlight the Create VT Action Plan, which is at the top of this list. This has detailed economic information as well as a statewide sector report on the creative economy. We also have information in 2019, there was assessing Vermont's creative economy that was done by the Mount Auburn Associations, And those folks did an incredible job of showing the economic impact across the state of the creative sector. And then we also want to highlight that there's a few places that have specifically already built out their creative and cultural plans. And this includes Bennington County. They have a full cultural plan that they developed in 2019. And we also have some other spaces around the state that have ensured that we move forward with opportunities like the study of the creative economy in East Central Vermont and other efforts that have happened in the past. So again, this is a full website of resources all about the creative economy and how we're moving forward here in the state of Vermont. I also want to quickly talk about the role of regional planning commissions. You have several regional planning commissions across the state. Depending on where you are covered by a different regional planning coalition. These folks sometimes work closely with economic development authorities. They always partner together, but sometimes they're under the same house. If you're interested in where your regional planning commission is on municipal ARPA efforts or in ensuring that the creative sector is included in their strategic plans, this is where you want to look. I also want to make sure that we're highlighting this because when we're thinking through the municipal ARPA money that Annie's about to talk about, these are some of your key allies when thinking through the municipal ARPA funds and how the creative sector can come into play. Now I want to take a second to hand it over to Annie and make sure that we are all on the same page about some serious opportunities that are happening in the creative sector. If you have any questions for me about strategic plans, or if there's example language, for example, from our 2016 plan study that you would like to access, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll absolutely send all of that information to you. There's also some other guidebooks created by folks like Americans for the Arts that I'm happy to send over on the foundations for the creative economy. Now that we're deep in and folks have understood the importance of this foundational element of really ensuring that you're getting the creative economy included in your town and regional strategic planning efforts to access this and future funding, I want to turn it over to Annie so that she can dig into the topic.
Thank you, Johanna. Give me a second. I want to share my slides with you all. Oh. There we go. Can everyone see that? Is it full screen? You're not seeing all kinds of weird things? Okay, perfect. All right. Well, I'm going to talk about, oh, first of all, I'm Annie McLean, as Johanna already introduced me. I am the Community Economic and Recovery Specialist with the Northeastern Vermont Development Association. We are the Regional Planning Commission and the Regional Development Corporation for Orleans, Caledonia, and Essex counties. So I do apologize, my presentation has a lot of examples from the Northeast Kingdom. It's not statewide because my work is very focused in the Northeast Kingdom, but the general ARPA information is the same throughout the state. So what we're going to cover is, first of all, local ARPA resources from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns and your Regional Planning Commission. Very briefly, what you can spend your money on, and then ARPA in your community, leveraging your ARPA aid, and then we'll throw in a few more funding resources that you can take a look at. I want to point this out right at the beginning. If you're interested in ARPA, state ARPA funds, local ARPA funds, any ARPA, anything to do with ARPA, please visit the Vermont League of Cities and Towns website. They have the most recent, up-to-date, current information on anything to do with ARPA. So that should be your first stop. If you have any questions, take a peek there, poke around. It's very straightforward. Again, most current information, they always have it there. And then I apologize for the rather duplicate slide, but the other stop you can make is for your Regional Planning Commission. Every Regional Planning Commission in Vermont has a person dedicated to helping municipalities and communities with their local ARPA funds. So there's a specific person at each of these Regional Planning Commissions that it's their job to assist municipalities. So that's a good resource, especially if you have specific questions or you don't know where to start, just contact your Regional Planning Commission. And you can go to the link right here in the slide, and it will let you figure out who your Regional Planning Commission is if you don't know. This is a slide I also borrowed from Vermont League of Cities and Towns. This is kind of the guidance about using ARPA funds from the League. It's to prioritize good governments, leverage your ARPA aid. So use the money that your town or your community has to get more money, use it for grant matches, use it to access additional funds rather than just spending it on a one-time expense. And then also think about best uses for the money for the future. Right, there we go. So what can you spend your money on? I'm not going to go into all the nitty-gritty details of the Treasury rule and ARPA. I don't think anyone really wants to know all of that. If you're interested, you can call me, email me, we can talk about that. But the bottom line, the final rule from Treasury, what you can spend your money on is provision of government services. So every town elected to take the what's called the standard allowance. So that means all of their ARPA funds are considered revenue loss. And the town can spend that on provision of government services. That literally means anything any government anywhere would potentially spend money on. So there's no categories. It's whatever the government of that town feels is the provision of government services. The other key specific category that is allowed is non-federal match for other federal programs. So if there's a federal grant out there, local ARPA dollars can be used as a match for that grant, which really opens up a huge possibility for funding. There are a few things you can't spend it on. Towns cannot spend it on deposits into pension funds, contribution to reserve funds, or to debt service. But the one exception to all this is now the non-federal match. Like I said, I really want to emphasize that is now allowed. So you can use this, towns can use this money, I'm going to say it again, as match for other federal grant programs. And this really allows communities to stretch their ARPA dollars and opens up a lot of different opportunities to access more funds. So there are still terms and conditions. Again, this deck was a little bit originally for municipalities, so we don't have to go through all this, but there are rules, but the message really remains the same. Take your time, be patient, and think bigger. There are a lot of ways to access funds and to gain access to more funds. And we really want to encourage towns to engage community members. Now that they don't have to think about what are eligible ARPA uses, there's a lot of opportunity to engage the community, look at existing community plans, public engagement exercises, and find out what the town really needs and what that community really needs and how the ARPA funds can be used best. And there's no rush. The funds don't have to be obligated until 2024 and expended by 2026. So there's still time to be really thoughtful and think about how these funds can be used. So what's going on with ARPA in your community? So every town is different in how they're prioritizing their ARPA funds. There's no required prioritization process or review process. Towns are free to conduct their ARPA or spend their ARPA dollars how they like. There's no requirement that there's a public process, but it is encouraged. The legislative body, which is the select board, board of trustees, city council, et cetera, are the ultimate decision makers on how the money will be spent in each town. And if you're going to talk to them, please be patient and gracious. This is still new for everyone. This is the first time that anything like this has occurred. So nobody fully understands it and nobody's an expert. So I encourage you to ask questions. If you don't know what's going on with ARPA in your community, call your town clerk, talk to your select board. If you don't know who those folks are, call your town office and find out, ask what's going on. Some towns have ARPA communities, but again, ARPA committees, but it's very different from town to town. So if you want to know what's going on, I would encourage you to ask and get involved and figure out what that process looks like in your town. And these are some examples of how communities are engaging the public. Craftsbury is holding public meetings, and they had a pitch competition. Then they allowed community members to submit funding requests, and then they reviewed them and made funding decisions. St. Johnsbury hired a public outreach facilitator to help do outreach to the community, to better involve the community and get feedback on how to spend those ARPA dollars. Some towns have websites specifically dedicated to ARPA where you can go and find out what's going on in your town. Some towns do community surveys. Town of Glover used some of their ARPA money to hire a town administrator to help manage their ARPA projects. Other towns have just done bond votes or votes at town meeting to authorize usage of funding. And then ARPA committees, which are community groups appointed by the select board to specifically work on ARPA projects and to engage the community to prioritize projects is something that a lot of towns are doing. This is just a quick slide on ARPA advisory committees. If your town has one, or if they don't, you could encourage them to form one if they haven't already. They're a great way to help gather information and gather community input. They are public bodies, so they do have to follow the open meeting law, which does create a little bit of work. And VLCT has a really nice ARPA advisory committee formation toolkit, which the RPCs help to create. So if you're interested in that, or you have questions, there's a link to that there. It's on the VLCT website. So talking about how towns, towns are taking different approaches of how they're prioritizing their projects, but a good place to start is the town plan or planning documents that you already have, and then looking at what those plans recommend, and then prioritizing funding needs for those items. If you have a project that you're wanting to seek funding from your town, a good place to look is your town plan or other planning documents from the town to see if it's already mentioned, or if there's some way you can connect your project to a goal or an opportunity in the plan. This is just a very overfull slide of different review criteria in terms of looking at the town plan, town master plan, capital improvement plan, different ways to kind of connect your request to another planning document or past planning initiatives in the town. And if you need help with that, the Regional Planning Commission is a great place to start. It can help you look at the regional plan, also the town planning documents as well. But connecting a project to a past planning process or a planning document in the town is a good way to really show the town that has been prioritized in the past. And I'm going to go through a few examples just of ARPA dollars, how they've been spent in different communities, just so people can kind of get a feel for how some towns are doing this. Excuse me. Leveraging local dollars with other federal sources is a great way, like I said at the beginning, to get more access more funding. There was a VTrans community grant that several towns in the NEK applied for together, all using local ARPA dollars for their portion of the 20% match. These 6 communities split the match, split the 20% match 6 ways, and they were able to leverage just under $3,000 per town into $60,000 in grant funds to have a scoping study done for a regional amenities plan for the Memorial Valley Rail Trail. The study will provide designs for construction-ready projects for each community for the fiscal year 2024. And this grant was just awarded last week, so pretty exciting. Another way that our communities are spending their ARPA dollars throughout the state are working with their communication union districts. In the Northeast Kingdom, 13 towns have voted to allocate a total of $941,750 in local ARPA funds toward constructing additional high-speed broadband infrastructure through NEK broadband. And the cool thing about this is funds pledged by these towns are matched by both NEK broadband, which is our local communication union district, and the Vermont Community Broadband Board. So basically all the local ARPA funding to build broadband in this area has been tripled. Collaboration with other community partner and organizations. A lot of towns are just taking requests, or if they're not taking requests, please feel free to talk to your town if you have a request. A lot of towns have not obligated all of their ARPA funds, and they're happy to entertain requests by nonprofits or other community partners. Craftsbury is a great example. They created an ARPA committee, and they went through a really robust review and recommendation process, and that allowed them to grant 7 awards to 7 local nonprofits, including Craftsbury Saplings, which is a local childcare center, Craftsbury Food Shelf, and a few others. And that was a really great way for these local nonprofits that don't have a lot of funding and don't have a lot of resources to access funding to be able to take some of these ARPA dollars and put them to work in these communities. Another example is the town of Concord. They went through the Let's Go Concord Initiative. They actually invited the Vermont Council on Rural Development to come in and do their community visit program. This is something VCRD does on a regular basis, but Concord was able to utilize it as part of their ARPA prioritization process. So they brought the community together. They had a really robust community engagement process where they were able to pick three key points to kind of for the community to focus on and to use their ARPA funding. So they decided the three things that are most important to them were to attract business and industry to Concord, to bring back a store to the community, and to clean up and improve a local beach. So they're kind of focusing their ARPA dollars on those, and they're considering now hiring a town administrator to help keep these projects going, also with their ARPA funds.
And Annie, just to highlight really quickly that I'm in the chat putting in some resources and links here for folks, but I just want to highlight that the Vermont Council on Rural Development is on our steering team with the Vermont Creative Network. And so if folks want to collaborate with them, especially on efforts like these, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to connect you, especially on some efforts like the community visit program or other resources that they might have. Very well versed in the creative sector.
That's great. Thanks, Johanna. Yeah, and they have, I know they've done kind of mini community visits. I don't know exactly what they call them, but they've done smaller versions of their full-blown program in other communities too, which is also something that they might be willing to do for if there's a specific project or a need. And one of the things really important is not to reinvent the wheel. You can learn from what other communities are doing. I've thrown a couple examples in here. VLCT has kind of their finger on the pulse of what a lot of towns are doing. So your regional planning commission or VLCT can kind of help you if you're looking for ideas, or if you want to see other examples from across the state to kind of get an idea. One of the things Rutland had kind of put together this economic development business plan competition. So basically they're offering a prize for the best business plan, and they had a competition, and there's other communities that are looking to mimic that. Lindenville was talking about doing something similar to kind of boost economic development. And I know a lot of these are not specifically related to the creative sector, but it just kind of gives you an idea of the wide array of things people are doing across the state. And again, it doesn't hurt to ask. Just talk to your town, see where they're at with their ARPA process. Do they have money left? What are they thinking? Another example, the Northern Forest Center pulled together a few municipalities, and they were able to provide the match grant, and they were able to apply for a municipal planning grant for a regional lodging feasibility study to kind of help build tourism that's based around the outdoor rec and creative economy in the Northeast Kingdom. Again, no ARPA dollars involved here, but this is phase one of a project, and these towns will be able to utilize the match from the Northern Forest Center to then perhaps throw in their ARPA money for a second phase of this project, which will hopefully bring them closer to having some new lodging accommodations built out. And then just basically looking at, like I said before, the needs of the town prior to COVID, and making sure that those inhibitors to growth are being addressed in the COVID recovery work. Town of Glover is exploring a public-private partnership to purchase a building for community space. It's part of the implementation of their past planning effort, the Heart of Glover Village Plan. So they're looking to partner with a nonprofit. The town is looking to partner with a nonprofit to buy a building that's right next to their town green, where they could use it for different types of arts and cultural activities, perhaps have a cafe, some co-working, kind of be a hub for their downtown. I'll skip that one for a sec. And then I want to talk really quickly about state ARPA programs. So this has really been focused on local ARPA dollars, but the state of Vermont also received ARPA dollars to the tune of a very large number there at the bottom of the screen. And there's plenty of programs that they have. Some have been rolled out and some have not. Vermont League of Cities and Towns has a guide on their website that was put out by the state that talks about all the different state programs. But looking through those to kind of see if there's something that fits your project, and then talking to your town about using their local ARPA funds for a match is a great way to stretch those local ARPA dollars and access additional funding from the state. And it doesn't have to be state ARPA dollars. You can literally access any grant program out there and use your local ARPA funds as a match. The sky is really the limit. So I can't stress that enough. If there's a grant that you've always wanted, or you have a project and there's a grant you've always looked at that could potentially fund it, and you just don't have that match, this is a great time to talk to your town about those local ARPA dollars and see if there might be a good fit there.
And Annie, I want to quickly interrupt you here since you're highlighting the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. If folks went on our website to register, it was highlighted as a flyer that we created with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, creative sector uses and ARPA funds. And so I want to put that in the chat here too, as people are thinking about their match dollars and really thinking about the comprehensive view of the creative economy and creative sector, all of the different kinds of programmings, community centers, and entities that could match here. So I just want to make sure that we're highlighting that resource. So just quickly interrupt you. Thank you.
No, thank you. That's great. Oh, you didn't have to interrupt. That was the end. So yeah, thank you. Again, I want to stress those two things. Talk to your town, find out what your ARPA, what your local ARPA process is if you're interested in accessing money. Find out what the process is. If they have a process for requests, they don't, make a request. Again, connecting it to a planning document, town plan, or some sort of local need is always really helpful. And then talk to VLCT, talk to your regional planning commission, reach out if you need help, or if you have questions. That's what we're here for.
Annie, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your detailed presentation information. You've done such a fantastic job in the Northeast Kingdom working with folks. And I know that you're part of a cohort of regional planning entities that are all working together to serve municipalities for this explicit purpose of how to access these federal funds and to make sure that this process goes smoothly. I would also just like to say thank you so much for highlighting throughout your presentation the tie-in of strategic planning, and especially the folks who are working to ensure that the creative sector is included in both municipal plans, but also in regional planning strategic documents. That anytime you can see that language in a strategic plan, it's going to give you more opportunities to apply for funding like this ARPA funding. Any future funding opportunity that's coming through the state or through the federal government, it's always a great idea to be able to cite your plan because it shows that there's community investment in the effort. And so even if it's a line in your town strategic plan that highlights the arts and cultural sector and the creative economy as a key creative segment of the work that you're doing in the town, that's really important. If you're highlighting arts and cultural organizations as key partners in your strategic town plan, that's even better. It's really important to just make sure that the creative economy and the creative sector is included, just like hospitality or any others would be in your strategic plans. And what I've found is most folks are pretty willing to work with you to get that language included. Do you find that's true, Annie? Not a big hurdle there, right?
No, it's not a big hurdle. The big hurdle is going through the process to amend your town plan, which sometimes can take a little bit of work. There's a few public meetings involved. There's a process, but your regional planning commission can help you with that, or your town planning staff if you're lucky enough to have town planning staff. But yeah, there's not typically a lot of opposition to putting in that type of language. And there's not always, but plans are often updated for many different reasons. Is before they're required to be updated every 8 years, but there's usually something in between, some sort of update or edit. So if you see your town doing that, that's a great time to also add the creative sector language and think about where that best fits in your plan. And looking toward the future, how that language might be utilized for grants. More specific is better. Having that general language kind of open, it makes it, you can apply for, it broadens the scope of things you can apply for, but putting in specific language too is really key. If you can say, hey, the plan says we should apply for this grant, or these are the opportunities and we should seek funding from here, that's really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I want to take a second now to open it up for questions from folks in the group. And I'm going to go ahead and take a second to say thank you so much to Annie. I will end our recording so that if folks have questions that might be personal to their town, where they don't necessarily want it put on the internet for all of posterity, that they feel comfortable in asking those questions. Again, if anyone has any questions for me about incorporating the arts and cultural sector and the creative economy into your strategic plans, please reach out to me. And I want to say before we turn off the recording, thank you so much to Annie McLean for joining us from the Northeast Kingdom on all of this work. And also, again, to folks who joined us, especially Ashley for closed captioning. And I'm going to ask Ashley to stick around so that we can make sure to have access for the rest of the meeting. But just wanted to give her a shout out afterwards. Thank you so much for joining us.